Hi, it's Tuesday night at 6:30, so it's time for what we're reading here on KDL. I'm Penny Z from the Ada branch, and I'm talking tonight with Vanessa, manager of the Cascade and Caledonia branches. But what we're talking about tonight is a special collection of books that we are piloting at the Ada branch that we're both very excited about. We've been working on this for a while. And they have, I'm putting this sticker on there. We're calling it KDL Core Collection. If you can see the core there. And what that means is that these are books that the librarians at KDL and the patrons love. They're ones that stick with you, ones that are perennial favorites, ones that we recommend to our patrons who are looking for a great book. And invariably people come back and say, thank you for recommending this book. Yeah. I loved it. So the librarians have chosen 100 of these books. Some are fiction, some are nonfiction, and they're starting at the Ada branch, and they've got the KDL Core sticker, and right now we've got them all in one spot when we open, and they will come back to Ada. All of our books kind of float around all the other libraries, and they won't be eligible to go for holds. So if you place a hold, you'll get a different copy, not one of these copies. These copies you'll find on the shelf. So when I'm looking for a great book to recommend, I'll have some cores to recommend. Now, Vanessa has read, at least half of the core books.
I counted through them this week just to see, and I think I've read about a third, which means I've got a goal for me, because I looked through and I was like, there's a lot of them I know about, but I haven't actually read yet. So this is kind of I think this might be a 2021 goal to kind of make my way through the rest of them. But I have read a lot of them and they're amazing. And like you said, most of them are ones that are, you described it once, it's sort of the sweet spot of being really well reviewed, but also like genuinely liked. So, and so you often get people come in and say, well, I told my book club that we really needed to do this. And I told my friends, then all my family members, they need to read those. And so we know that they're really good because people are talking them up.
They're like the super popular girl that's also sweet.
Yes. But so you can't hate her. You just can't hate her, even if you want to. Yeah. Totally.
So tell us about one that you like, Vanessa.
Okay. I will try to focus. My dog is licking my leg right now. So it's kind of strange. But anyway, so if I disappear, it'll be sort of me shooing the dog leg. But I have several that I just worked on, and many of these books are not, most of these are newer, but they're not all new. But I picked up one that was a bit newer called I never get this right, The Guest List by Lucy Foley.
And I haven't read that one, see, so I'm glad you've got that.
Yes. And I read this actually this week for this particular thing, but I've been hearing good things about Lucy Foley and about this book in particular. And it's all about this group of people that gather on this island off the coast of Ireland for a wedding. And it goes back and forth between different perspectives. So you get the perspective of the bride and the perspective of the best man, and you get the perspective of one of the bridesmaids, and you get the perspective of one of the plus ones that comes along with the guest. And you go through, and it actually reminded me quite a bit. I don't know that the writing style was so much like it, but it reminded me a lot of And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This idea of
like Agatha Christie.
Yep. Idea of everybody gathering on this island where you have to get there by boat, and everyone has secrets, and it starts out with somebody screaming and coming out and realizing that maybe there's a body and then coming back and forth. So I really have enjoyed this one a lot. So Lucy Foley, The Guest List. I think she wrote another book called, I want to say it's like The Hunting Party. And that one is actually available on Hoopla, I believe.
Oh, great. So you can get those anytime on Hoopla, no holds needed.
Yes. So anyway, Lucy Foley, give her a try. And especially if you liked And Then There Were None or some of the Agatha Christie's, she was really good. And so these are the two that I've been doing most recently. I also picked up, you can see where I am in it right now. I'm reading Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee. And this was a National Book Award finalist, as you can see from I don't know where I am here. Okay. As you
got
can
it.
see from the beautiful sticker.
Mhm.
And this is just a beautiful saga, family saga. It starts in the 1930s in Korea and then moves to Japan. And it's about this family. It starts out with a family that owns or rents a boarding house in Korea, and they have a child who has a cleft palate and I believe a club foot. And that family member they don't think they'll ever find a bride for their son because he's not perfect. And the matchmaker finds a bride for him, and the bride comes and discovers this beautiful human. They have a daughter together, and then it takes across time it starts out with this little family, and then it follows the daughter when she moves to Japan, and then it follows the children that she has as well. And it's so good. We were going to talk. Nanette Zorn was going to be with us tonight, and she wasn't able to make it. And I was definitely going to talk pachinko with her because she was telling me how much she enjoyed this. But give it a try, and then come to the Cascade or the Caledonia Library and come talk to me about it, because I'm dying to talk to somebody about this one.
Or Nanette.
Yes, or Nanette. She would love to talk to you about it too.
Nanette's at Cascade as well.
Yes, absolutely. Do you want me to do another one, or you want to do one?
I'll sneak in.
Okay.
Because we're going to get a bunch in tonight. I'm going to throw in one that Vanessa hasn't read yet, and that is Educated. And a couple other people have talked about this on my show, so I won't go too into it. But it is a great nonfiction memoir about a woman who was raised in a home. And you used a word to describe this, Vanessa, because you just started it and didn't go on. Kind of a prepper home, if you know what that means. Someone who is away from the general civilization, all on their own. They're surviving, they're growing their own food. They're distrustful of society, government definitely, but society in general and school systems and all of that. And it's about the girl who grows up in this house and eventually moves away from it, which is the best part for me. I mean, the interesting part is to see her start to shift.
Yeah.
You see her thinking of it as a child and just so proud to be when she was able to shoot a gun and do it, doing these things and being really proud to have her dad proud of her. And then learning that there's another way of doing things, and some things just that transition, that realization, she does it really well in how she describes that. And it's not something she's ever going to, you still love your parents no matter what.
Right.
And that comes through.
Did you feel like it was like The Glass Castle in any way?
I don't know if there was as much abuse.
Okay.
I mean, there definitely was, but I think it was more recognizable as a family unit.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And not as out there.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think it's really interesting. Like these, the memoirs that talk about and really transition, like you said, from not really realizing that your family unit is different from what other family units are like. And that sort of discovery piece of it, and recognizing that you aren't the same, and then trying to figure out what you want to keep and discard, I think is kind of a beautiful thing that really good memoirists tend to do, at least the family members. Yeah.
And highly recommend it. Great read. It's one of those, everybody likes it. Everybody's talking about that. I hate reading ones everybody likes. And what if I don't? But then I read it, I'm like, okay, I understand now.
Yeah. Tara Westover, I think, was at the January series at Calvin University this year, I think, too.
Yeah, I missed that. Yeah. That is fabulous.
Mm-hmm. So you might still be able to look it up.
I'm going to force you to hear one more.
Yeah, please do.
This one is dear to my heart right now. Lisa Wingate's Before We Were Yours. We are going to be discussing this one at the Amy Van Andel Library's very first Zoom book club. So if you want to be part of the Amy Van Andel book club, February 26th is our first meeting. So grab a copy of this one. It is about little children who are kind of, I would call ragamuffin-y.
Mm-hmm.
They live on a houseboat, kind of in the genre we're talking about, where they've got a tough life, a little different from everybody else. But these particular kids, this is based on a true story where they were nabbed by an adoption agency. And
parents' worst nightmare, right?
Pardon me?
Parents' worst nightmare.
Yes, it comes out later that very rich, very well-connected people were employing this adoption agency, wanting a very specific kind of kid. Give me a little white blonde kid. And this agency looked for these children, these kind of little towhead kids in the poorest of the people. And there were stories of some people, some of the parents were told that their child died in childbirth. And their children were taken from them. And some like this were just seen on the side of the street. And when parents would try to get them back, these were impoverished, unconnected, living hand to mouth people. And a lot of times the government at that time, the sheriff, were in on this, were paid off by the adoption agency. And everyone told themselves that this is for the benefit of the kid. This is in their best interest. They're leaving this terrible existence of hand-to-mouth poverty, and they're going to this high society people who have the money for these kids. So this book is from the point of view of the children. And you see what they go through and how they get disconnected from their family and how some of them are really broken into pieces and try to reconnect at later points in their lives. And some of them find out the secret of who they really are at some point, and can they reconnect and can they become whole with who they are. So that it was heartbreaking and but very intense, and you want to find out what happens to these children.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking that it was a true story.
Yeah, it's a novelized version of a true story, right?
Yes. This was an actual adoption agency, and some of its clients are people that you would recognize from Hollywood.
Really?
Yes.
Can you give me initials so I can guess?
JC.
Oh, JC.
Think coat hangers.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I gotcha.
Wire hangers.
Yeah. To find out though, for sure, you have to do the Amy Van Andel book Zoom on the 26th, right?
That's right. And talk about Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate with us on Zoom.
Yes.
What else do we got there, Vanessa?
Yeah. So I have, let's see. I have another nonfiction. Why do I never do this right? I'll Be Gone in the Dark. One Woman's Obsessive Search for the Golden State Killer. It's written by Michelle McNamara. And you might recognize this. It was part of a sort of larger story. Michelle McNamara was married to Patton Oswalt, who is a well-known comedian. And she was genuinely obsessed with these sort of true crime things. So she was very involved. She had a blog, and she got very, very involved in searching for this very particular killer. She had actually named him the Golden State Killer, and he had raped and killed multiple people during a period of time in California. And she wanted to track him down. He'd never been caught. And so she spent hours and hours and night after night after night with connecting with this, writing in her blogs. She had started writing a manuscript about this search, and she died in her sleep one night. And it was just terribly sad. And Patton Oswalt, after she died, really wanted the manuscript to be completed. And so he hired, or he asked to writers if they would take her information and complete the manuscript. So as you're reading through, they'll talk about things that are specific, like this is almost verbatim from her manuscript. This is stuff that was pieced together from her notes, and that sort of thing. And the really interesting thing about it was that very shortly after the publication of the book, the Golden State Killer was actually discovered and arrested. And so it was in some ways this very, very, it's a very full circle moment. It was very touching. You can find interviews with Patton Oswalt online where he talks about how thrilled she would have been that that they caught the killer, and that her desire and her bringing this more to the forefront by even just giving the killer a name may have played a part in discovering his identity. So it's in some ways, I mean, it's a very compelling, the story itself is compelling. It tells the story of this person who does these horrific things. So it's a true crime story. And so that's really fascinating, but it's also fascinating on the backstory that this was something that somebody gave so much of their attention and time to. And it was in many ways a love letter to his wife to get this manuscript finished and published. So
yeah, I was going to say, everything I've read of what Patton Oswalt says about this, just you can tell how much he adored her, yes, which is very touching and sad.
Yes. Yeah. And they had a daughter. They have a daughter, Alice. I think he's remarried now, but it's just such a really wonderful homage to her life's work in here. And it was really, really neat. So if you like true crime, but even if you just like true stories, if you like the idea that you can kind of sink into a rabbit hole on things that you find interesting or compelling, if you've been a little more online than you would like this year, you might like it for all of those reasons. Just a little bit. Yeah. Just a little bit.
And I'm going to stop for a hot second to say Mary says, hello, ladies. And that we're two of her favorite people. So that's nice. And Krista says she loves I'll Be Gone in the Dark. So thanks, Krista.
We are two peas in a pod. Come talk to us. Come talk to us.
Yeah. And don't be shy. If you're watching and in the comments, write down some of your favorite books too. We love to hear that.
Absolutely.
The core. So do you have any more to share, Miss Vanessa?
Sure, I can keep going, but I've done two. Do you want to do a couple?
Okay, well, I will throw in A Gentleman in Moscow. And again, this is all coming from the KDL Core Collection. And if you're interested in what books are in here, none of us can get into Ada Branch quite yet to see the whole collection, but you can search our catalog for KDL space CORE. And KDL Core books will come up and you'll get to see the whole 100, of which this is one. It's Amor Towles' A Gentleman in Moscow. I think this is a great book to read this year of quarantine.
Yeah. It reminds me of, every time I see that cover, it reminds me of Tom Hanks's Airport. Was that the name of the film where he lives in the airport, only the airport?
I did not see that.
I can't. Maybe it's not called Airport, but it was called. I can't remember. But he does. I'm pretty sure it's Tom Hanks, and he lives in the airport, and he can't leave the airport. So every time I see this one, that's what I think of.
And that's in this one, we have a count in Russia right after the Russian Revolution, mm-hmm. who he's a count, and a lot of the aristocracy did not survive long after the revolution, but he was lucky enough to be part of, kind of inadvertently, a protest song.
Oh.
Yes. He wrote it. I don't think he meant it quite the way a lot of people took it. Uh-huh. But because of that, he got some cred with the revolutionaries and was allowed to live. But he had to only live in this very beautiful hotel. Mm-hmm. So they're like, oh, poor you, spend the rest of your life in a luxury hotel, not quite a jail, but he cannot leave. So you would think that was a really boring story to read about. Because what it is you hear his life story from then on trapped in this hotel and he cannot leave. Krista, this one is fiction.
Yes.
So of course it's based on, I mean, it takes place in it's a historical fiction, historical time in Russia, but it is fiction. It's made up. And, but the Count, he keeps living. I mean, that's what's exciting about it. He does not just stop and atrophy. He is quite the character. His voice is hysterical and he's full of life. I mean, he gets angry sometimes too, but I mean, he's being played by, they're talking about making a movie of it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, good.
And the actor's name just ran out of my brain. So
Yeah.
look it up. And they talk about, he has relationships with a cook who we would never really talk about in real life because, you know, he was a count. And he meets all of these different people in society and all the inner workings of the hotel. And people come to the hotel and he sees them. And then at one point, he helps to save a young girl who comes to the hotel. And you see her as she grows up. And it's a great relationship story. It's very uplifting in its own way. And if you're stuck in the house, he's stuck in the hotel and he's still living a life. So I recommend it for right now.
Absolutely. Isn't that what we need to just sort of look at? How do we continue? And I think all of us are trying to do that, figure out how to sort of reinvent ourselves from our smaller corridors and our smaller pods of people and whatnot. So I have it on my shelves waiting to be read. So maybe I'll have to bump that up to the next one.
Yes, I love that one. And one more quick. See, this is bad because there's 100 core books. So you'll never shut us up.
Talking, yeah.
I recommended this book, I think when I had to do a book recommend interview on one of the TV stations. Yeah. But it was like years ago. This is one of the older core collection, but it's still very popular. It's such a wonderful book. If you like books about World War II, if you're not sick of them yet.
if you like The Nightingale, another core book, but if you like The Nightingale, for sure.
Yes. And this is about a man and his blind daughter. And it is so moving. They live in Paris and he crafts for his daughter a miniature of the city of Paris because she has to learn to navigate the streets. So he very meticulously built this to scale so that the little girl could feel it and learn what all the streets were and learn where things went and learn, where the different, and this is the baker and he goes there. So that's how she was her introduction to finding her world as a blind girl and being able to navigate it, which just that was so.
It was really beautiful and it's beautifully written. And I will say this was one I listened to and the audio is just spectacularly done. It's really, really good. And it does juxtapose like that experience of the father and the daughter against a Nazi soldier, right? It's been a while since I've read it, but it's so interesting and it really humanizes the experiences of all these different people experiencing these world events and without excusing anyone, but it was
no, everyone in the book is a fully realized human being. He doesn't make anyone into a monster.
No.
You discover who they are. The Nazi boy is a young man. He's a boy.
Yeah.
And you see where he is in his life and what's happening, and you know what happened in Paris. So you're kind of feeling the tension build throughout. Are these two going to come together?
Yeah.
In a bad way. So that is always there as you move from one point of view to the other one. So it builds and it's humanizing and it's beautiful. It won, what did it win? It won the Pulitzer Prize.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a book snob, you will also love it.
You will love it, yes. But it's also very readable. So if you would be put off by a Pulitzer Prize, don't be. It's also really, really good. Yeah.
Listen to the audio.
Yes. And speaking of another World War II and great audio, The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. And this is really, it's all said in the title. It's the story of a Jewish man who goes to Auschwitz and is given the job of tattooing the numbers on the different people. And it's his experience surviving throughout this time in the labor camp and the death camp, and then also his relationship with with a young woman who is also a person who's living in the death camp. And it was really, I thought it was really touching, but it's also read by one of my very favorite audiobook readers, an actor named Richard Armitage. And he played, I think it's Thorin Oakenshield in the Hobbit movies. Yeah. So he was really, he has this wonderful, wonderful, rich, resonant voice, and he does just a wonderful job with the audio. So if you're looking, and I believe that's on Hoopla as well, that audio. So go immediately and download it and listen to it. And then you can send your thank you note to Vanessa at the Cascade Caledonia Library. And you can come and talk to me about it. But I do like these World War II stories. But I actually just found these two to be really touching, really compelling. And also just, I like a great audiobook, and these two both fit the bill on that.
And the Tattooist of Auschwitz, it really made me ponder when you're in a situation like that, where if you don't do this, you're going to die.
Yes.
You also have the guilt for, I mean, not only from the tattooist point, because he did this to survive, but there are people who in the story who do other things to survive. What if you become the commandant's girlfriend?
Yes.
What kind of guilt do you have there? And does everyone else who's, lined up for death hate you now? And you didn't have a choice. And I think this would be a great book for a book discussion.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. And I think that it also looks into, like, it's just the fact that he is able to use his influence to help out and or save a few people, and who those people might be, and who is it that you can't save. And the fact that you are placed in the situation where even doing good feels bad, right? Nothing about it feels good. Yeah, this would be a really great one to dig into with a book club, or a beginning philosophy of ethics course or something like that. So, speaking of things that might want to give you therapy, I also have the book Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. Yes, we both read this, and I honestly, I was talking about it today at the library, and everyone was like, I love that book. I love that book. I love that book. I love that book. And I read this, I believe, very early 2020, before I even knew I needed it. It was so good. So it's written by Lori Gottlieb, who is a therapist, and she is dealing at the very beginning of the book. She has a therapy practice. She focuses in on about a handful of people that she does therapy with. And at the beginning of the story, she experiences a really bad breakup. Somebody she thought she was going to marry, bad breakup, and it just flattens her. And she doesn't quite know what to do with all those emotions. And she ends up having to find a therapist, which I didn't realize was kind of a big deal if you're a therapist, because you can't go to anybody and you can't go to anybody who has conflicts of interest somehow with you, or might be involved in you personally, or any of those things. And so she finds a therapist, and it juxtaposes her experience in therapy with her experience as a therapist. And what I thought it did, so it asked great questions, really common humanity questions. But what I thought it did so well was that it explained, or it demonstrated, that no matter how learned you are, no matter how much you know about human emotion, no matter how wise you are, sometimes life just flattens you, right? And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. That's sort of the common human experience, and how you use therapy and the support of other people, and asking good questions and doing all those things to find your way out of those moments. I just thought it was just tremendous. I loved it. It was my book of the year for 2020.
It was so fascinating to watch her journey.
Yeah.
From the inside and from the therapist's point of view. I mean, making the discoveries that you kind of were saying to her a while ago. Well, maybe that,
Yeah.
to have her kind
Yeah.
of figure that out, it helps you give insight to maybe your own issues too.
Yes. And she does all of the shenanigans that everybody else does in therapy, right? She's not like, so she's trying to, pull the wool over his eyes. She's trying to like make herself look better than maybe she feels, all those things. And I just thought that was so great. Like the common human experiences that we have to go through these things and that we have to find our way through them. And that therapy and a really trusting relationship with somebody who walks through those things with you can be tremendously helpful. My favorite character is maybe the person that she does therapy with who just wants to work at Trader Joe's because the people at Trader Joe's seem happy. That's my favorite one. I was like, dang, I want to work at Trader Joe's too. It's so fun.
And so when I was thinking about that, reading that part, I'm like, that's kind of why I work at the library.
Yes. I agree. I totally agree. This idea of talking books with people and being able to push things out to people that they're just like this moment right now. This is one of my favorite things to do is to introduce people to things that I know they're going to love. Or at least if they don't love them, they're going to lead to good conversations or good things to think through. Yeah, I loved it. This is our Trader Joe's, Penny. This is our Trader Joe's. Yeah.
The library. And that's why I get to talk to you now without masks because we're online and we get to talk about books. So thank you to everyone who listened to us talk about books for a half an hour. Thank you. Please join me again next week, Tuesday night at 6:30. I've got Terry DeBoer next week.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if she reads about the weather.
Whoa. Yeah.
So that's going to be exciting. Yeah. Vanessa, thank you so much. You have to come on again because you're one of my favorite people in the world to talk books about.
My pleasure. Anytime. You give me a call. Give me a date.
Yay. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next week.